Welcome to the DMF. I'm Justin Younts. This is part two.
Um, Switching gears a little bit here, I want to also talk about Ai Weiwei's Turandot. I thought
Right,
that was really interesting as well because you have this person who's like this political prisoner in some ways and
right,
this activist, and
right.
he says in the film, I'm not an opera director. I'm a creative. Talk a little bit about how that started. How did you come
Well,
aboard that
there's
project?
a lot of concentric circles in my life,
Yeah,
and this is
yeah.
another one of those times where I I was living in Rome, as I said, with my husband in 2012, and my friend and landlady Roberta Guida de Bagno said my girlfriend Paola has a son. He's 21. He's in film school, and we think he's talented. But would you take a look at his film?
Yeah.
So I said, sure. So I looked at his film and I said, no, wait a minute. No, he's not just talented. This guy's like an artist and he's
Yeah.
amazing. So I helped him finish it. We got it into some festivals, it won some awards. And then in 2013, when I was filming in Milan, I said to Maxime Derevenko, you've got to come up and you've got to be the cameraman up here. We need you. He said,
Yeah.
okay. So he came up. He was a cameraman for us on every shoot, actually, three shoots,
Oh wow.
and the DP on two of them. And then Jacek Laska came in and was our big cinematographer. He was a cinematographer for Robert Altman, so it's really
Oh
Holy
wow.
School of photography.
Robert.
Unbelievable.
Oh wow.
Beautiful.
Three
Yeah.
sisters and oh
Yeah. So that was
man.
amazing. So Maxine came up and was our cinematographer for two other shoots. And so then he went back to Rome and where he lived, and he became the film and video head for the Rome Opera House. So he was shooting the directors and doing interviews with
Yeah.
Sofia Coppola and other directors who were directing the operas there. And he said, I really want to do something with Ai Weiwei. So Mark, he says, very funny story. He sent out a lot of emails, letters
Yeah.
to production houses and other places to see if anybody would be interested. And Marta Zaccarone from Incepted Film, who's production, she's my producing partner on this.
Mm.
She said, this sounds great. Let's meet. And then she brought on Miguel Kogo, who's a co-writer. And Miguel did Netflix The Red Doors. He wrote The Red Doors with some other writers. He's a great writer. And he teaches out of Bologna. He's a great guy. And so they wrote what they thought would be an interesting thing. They knew that Ai Weiwei was doing Turandot. But it's interesting because that was years later when I was doing Viva Verdi.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Rome Opera House had no intentions or no ideas about bringing Ai Weiwei in to do Turandot. It was years later that happened. So
Okay.
these things, and it's interesting that both films are coming out now. That's the
Yeah.
other thing life happens, films happen at their own
Yeah. Yeah.
timing, right? So, excuse me.
Oh.
So, um, Ai Weiwei and Maxime's lives kind of resonated because Maxime's father, Vladimir Derevenko,
Mm.
was a Bolshoi ballet dancer out of Russia.
Oh wow.
And he fell in love with an Italian woman, was going to marry him, and he was exiled because of that. Because for someone of a high stature, you only stay with your Russians, so not marrying an Italian. So he left. And so when Maxime was speaking to Ai Weiwei about philosophy and life and how he would approach this, their lives really kind of resonated because Ai Weiwei was exiled with his father. His father was a poet,
Yeah.
and he was exiled to Siberia when Ai Weiwei was a young child. So he understood the barrenness of life, how life could be with no art, with no music,
Yeah.
with nothing there. So they kind of bonded over this,
Yeah.
and Ai Weiwei brought him in, and there was some very intimate moments where Ai Weiwei explains his process, and you can see his creative process, his collaboration with other artists,
Yeah.
and this is interesting because the opera only had 8 performances, 8 days
Really.
of performances. That's it.
That's it.
Right. And also, it closed. It started in
Yeah, yeah.
2020.
Because of
The
the
COVID
pandemic,
started.
yeah.
Maxime was only filming a couple days. They stopped. The Rome Opera House closed, which has never happened before
I
in
heard tell you
200
about that.
years of war and other things.
Yeah, that was so sad hearing that. They were like all these things had happened and they never closed, and
Right.
because of this pandemic, they closed.
And Justin, there were 600 people working on this opera. Those are a lot of lives to put on hold, but obviously,
Wow.
you know,
Well, no one
pandemics.
knew. No one knew it was going to go. We all
Exactly.
thought it was like the end of the world.
Right.
It was.
And Maxime and Marta, I wasn't on board yet, but they didn't know, is this going to continue? Or, will we be able to pick up? Is the opera house ever going to open again? Will the world,
Yeah.
stop to exist? So then in 2022, they came back. They had short rehearsal. They had Oksana Levnev from Ukraine was
Yeah.
the first woman conductor.
Yeah.
And she came on board and brought such beauty and emotion. And, the baton was her soft weapon.
Yeah.
And the musicians were her warriors for
Yeah.
peace.
And
So
at that
beautiful.
time, the Ukraine war
Right.
was breaking out,
Exactly.
right? All these
Right then.
parallels.
Exactly then. I think the opera opened the 22nd. I think the war maybe was, right then at that time, 2022. So they had these 8 days of performance and incredible reviews. As you can see, the costumes were just stunning, the set designs, the projection, all of Ai Weiwei. But you could see him working with these artists to create these, and what a beautiful collaboration it was. And the artisans in Italy, like in Europe, and often in Hollywood too, they're passed down. The artists passed down generation to generation. So it's interesting to see what a serious undertaking it is. It's heart and soul and legacies, their families' legacies right there. So we get to see that. And then Michael Fabiano, the great tenor who played Caliph, and how eloquent he is. So the film is riddled with philosophy and
Yeah.
with incredible music and beautiful visuals to look at. I
Well,
think it's stunning.
I love it. Not to be biased or whatever, but that one was my favorite because I'm very into politics. So I was
Yeah,
seeing all the stuff. He was friends with Julian Assange, all these
right.
all these things I didn't know, and I just read a book about communist China and what Mao Zedong and
Sure.
everything, and I didn't realize that his father was a poet and had to go through,
Yes.
and like reading that book, I understand like what that you got to pray to this this sign. You've got to there's no Western clothing. It's crazy to grow up in that time, and for him to still be willing to speak out against
Oh,
China,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
because they're not like it's not like here where
After
you
being
can say
kidnapped it
yeah,
and
that's
left
in there
for
too.
81 days. So yeah, he doesn't talk about that, but you could
Yeah.
imagine, how Ai Weiwei suffered.
Yeah, because he said he was beaten or whatever. Yeah, he didn't go into like specifics about what he did, but
No.
I just thought this was such a beauty. And then he brought that to Turandot with
Right.
he said the parallels between the pandemic, um, what's going on in Ukraine, and then I believe
Right.
there was a third one. But it's such
Right.
a beautiful piece. I hope that one's also being considered,
It
for
is. It is.
Oscar.
It's up for Oscar consideration, and
Yeah.
it's yes, I think it's important. Both films are very meaningful.
Yes.
Different lens. We have a different lens on different things, but one is aging. Aging population and how to take care of them, and the other one really is about social justice. And Ai Weiwei calls this an opera for peace. I think it's his
Yeah.
manifesto of hope and an opera for peace. And hopefully, we'll give people a different way of looking at the world and ideas for change.
Yeah.
And I think we're all activists I brought on Andy Cohen as a
Mhm.
producer, and then Andy brought on Julian Lennon, another activist, and then I brought on my friend Marcy Polier as executive producer. All activists, all understood how meaningful this could be to put a spotlight on on the world through art, through opera, through another medium.
Yeah, I just thought it was beautiful. Just the
Thank
way,
you.
as you got Ness and Dorma there at the end, and
Exactly.
everything, and just yeah,
Yeah.
I felt so blessed to be able to see it, but both
Oh,
films, because
that's
they
so
just,
nice.
I was like, yes, people need to see this, because
Yeah,
we need to understand that art is important to move culture forward.
that's right.
And I think we forget that. We just try to look at this like it's just
Take it for
consumed as
granted, right?
entertainment, and it's
Yeah,
like but it's not. When you have real artists working on things,
right.
they're going to bring sensibilities that you're not going to see. That's why I mentioned, Paul Verhoeven. He grew up in world, the torn world of World War II, and he was able to bring that. If you just hired an action movie director, he wouldn't have gotten understood what the West looks like to the other worlds. He brought, so it's just the more we bring in artists, the more we can just continue to push things and bring empathy. But I loved what Ai Weiwei was saying, and it just,
Yeah,
I mean, both films really resonate with me because they're both timely. They're both just important for this time period that we're living in,
meaningful.
and
Mm,
yeah, we need it. One of the things I also found out is you created the Dusty Awards at SVA.
yeah,
Talk a little
yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah, so I was working, I think I was working at Orion then. I'm trying to remember when that was, but yeah, so I was teaching at the School of Visual Arts,
Yeah,
and I said, there's all these great short films. And so I went to all the studios and I said, I want to create something. I need some money to
yeah,
give these students incentives and awards for their work. And they were, okay, sure, here's a couple $1,000. And then I went to Ari and some other of the products that are used.
yeah.
Cameras and things. And Kodak, I think, gave us some funds or something. And so I put together this thing called the Dusty Awards. And it was like at least 25, 26, 27 years ago. And I think they were still doing it until a few years ago. I think the pandemic maybe interfered.
Mm,
But yeah, Reeves was the head there then. And
mm,
we put this together, and I just thought it was an important part to get these voices out and to encourage students to keep
right.
going and to give them a little bit of a leg up. They got a first look deal. Whoever
Yeah,
won got a first
yeah.
look deal with New Line, I think it was. New Line was, a little bit like Orion at the time. Those,
Yeah, to do
yeah,
that, Lionsgate, they were kind of like the big,
exactly. Love those
yeah,
companies.
yeah,
They take more risks in a way
yeah.
they can. They're able
And
to.
we're losing a lot of them now. I mean, Miramax, that was another one.
Yeah,
These
of
these
course.
small, they're kind of being. I don't know. This is why I'm kind of against these mergers. I'm just like,
Being
the more
absorbed.
the more we have, the more voices we have, the more. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think more is better, especially for the customer, because then we can, choose that. That's why I love what, A24 has done with,
Yes. And
Neon.
Neon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Neon is another
exactly.
one
Yeah.
where they're going out there.
Yeah.
And
Concordia is another one too. These
mm,
small jewels. Yeah.
yeah,
They do good documentaries and other things. Yes. It's
and then
Davis
there's
Guggenheim.
and then
Yeah.
there's the one that was used to be under Focus Focus Features. I think it was called.
Searchlight 2 was a little bit
Searchlight.
of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
Searchlight 2. Yeah, amazing films.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel lucky to have been a part of that. And when I was at Universal,
yeah.
Jim Katz started Universal Classics, which was the
Oh,
beginning of the classics. So it
yeah,
was Universal Classics, and then it went to Orion Classics with Michael and Tom, and
mm-hmm.
then they created Sony Classics. So, but it started at Universal
Oh,
really with
that's how.
Jim
Yeah, that's
Katz,
how Sony Classic. Yeah,
right? And
that's another studio we didn't mention. That's a
exactly,
great, still
yeah.
great studio.
Right. So Jim is he's kind of been the godfather of both my movies because he's
Yeah,
my go-to guy when I go, okay, I'm having an issue here. Goes, okay, this is what you do. He's been great.
yeah,
Going along and raising funds and juggling so many things. It takes in two films sometimes at the same time. The last couple of
yeah,
years it's been both films, it's a lot. And I'm used to having a big staff. When I was at the studios, I know what to do, but you need a big staff in order to make those things
To
happen.
delegate.
So in a smaller staff, you really have to hustle and you have to be more creative. And I've always have some interns and some other people working with me, but it's a little frustrating sometimes because I know everything that has to be done, because I've done it for decades. And there are strategies, smart strategies that can help move you a little further, a little faster. And so it's good. I've been feel very lucky that I've been able to bring my life work and passion with my decades long work in the film industry, in the entertainment industry, to both these films. I feel very fortunate and blessed and lucky and happy. Happy to have done it, happy to be at this place, after all these years. So it's a good thing.
Now you also do teaching. Talk a little bit about teaching. How you
Oh yeah, I'm always teaching. I always love, well, I love students have great ideas. They're fearless, and that's what I love more than anything is
and you
fearlessness.
bring it out of them. I can tell.
That's right.
You're a teacher that I would be like, okay,
That's right.
You're not somebody who's gonna be like, okay, we're just gonna stick you
Oh
in
yeah,
the book and
it's really
everything. It's
funny.
like that.
I remember when I was living in Rome, and Maxime and I would have these deep conversations for hours and hours, and Paola and Roberta were my contemporaries. So they would say, "What do you talk about?" And I say, "A million things. Are you kidding me?" It is so exciting because, especially in Europe, it happens here too, but especially in Europe, they're educated in the arts, so they can sing any aria, they can quote any poet. Honestly, in philosophy-wise, they're beyond. It's an exciting, very rich thing to be with anybody. I don't care how old they are. If they're 5 years old and they can, play a piano and talk about something, I'm interested. I'm curious. I want to learn. I want to know. I want to exchange. And that exchange is what is exciting for me in life.
Yeah, and I feel like that's some of the. I don't know. Some people say that America's kind of a country without a culture in some ways, because we just don't seem to. If you go to the average person, they can't tell you who's in the government. They can't tell you
Yeah.
artists. They can't tell you about philosophy. And I feel like that's, I don't know. I question is that by design? Is this a Machiavellian plan to keep us under rule, or is
You're
it
so right. Yes, you're
it's
right.
scary.
But the saddest part is that that's such a rich life to understand art and to have it as part of your life and to question things because of it. You see an opera and it affects you, the the arias and the vision, the costumes. You're immersed in these worlds that change your consciousness. And in fact, I know I talk about this once in a while because I'm a little obsessed about it, because Verdi is one of my heroes. And he wrote in 432 hertz, and opera at the time was in 440. So what he wrote in, it's called Verdi's A, and it's the sound of the Amen and the Om. And it's the universal sound, that 432 hertz. And so when you hear his operas and his music, it kind of elevates your consciousness because it's this universal sound that hits you at a different place. So
it was like 500, I think, or something. 800 is I forget what 800 hertz. There's the different levels of hertz that inspire different. Sometimes I'll just listen to just like hertz, just so I can hear.
Yeah.
Get into like a different feeling. But I don't know. It's so important for us to ask questions, especially in
Yes,
this day and time. I keep
totally.
saying that, but I don't know how else to say it. I feel like we've gotten to this point where we're so divisive because we're not asking questions. We're not, looking at things from a different lens. We're kind of just going here. I'm hoping my generation and the next generation are going to start going, we need to start looking at some of these problems that are coming down the
Yeah.
pike now, not
We need some leaders.
later. Yeah,
Some
leaders, new
leaders.
leaders
Yeah.
with new
From your
ideas,
generation
you
that
know?
they're going to really step forward and take charge and lead us in another direction where
Yeah.
there's equality, where there's
Yes.
social justice, where there's the arts are appreciated, all those things, and artists are appreciated instead of banned.
Yeah,
And
that's my fear right now is we're losing
yeah,
egalitarianism. People, a
yeah,
lot of people don't now believe that people are equal. And anyway, and it's like, how do we get to this point? You know, we need to put culture into there, and we need to start looking at this from a different lens, so we're not just going back. It's amazing because history goes in cycles, and we almost have a
mm,
cheat sheet of how things are going to go. And we seem to
yeah,
never want to learn from history. We always want to go, it's like, how did this happen? And like, well, look at this part in history.
exactly.
Look at this dictator here. Look at this. Like, this stuff all happens in cycles, and there's similarities to each one. And we never seem to do that. People seem to get swept up in propaganda. And that's why I'm saying reading, I think, is the thing that we're losing. We need to read as much as possible. But sorry, that's me on the soapbox.
No, I agree with you 100%. So
um,
Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.